this gets launched with today's graphics, it will drive gamers insane. There aren't nearly enough fighting games involving enormous monsters, at least not decent ones. War of the Monsters is an amazing-looking game that perfectly captures the fascination of legendary cinematic monsters like Godzilla and King Kong. However, both as a single-player and two-player game, the actual gameplay is basic and rather troublesome. War of the Monsters is still worth playing for anybody who likes the source material, but aside from the aesthetics, the game falls short of its potential. It is a 3D fighting game released in 2003, developed by Incognito Entertainment and distributed by Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation 2. War of the Monsters is a combat game in which you select from a variety of giant creatures and try to beat the living daylights out of any other creatures who get in your way. And it just so happens that the majority of the action in War of the Monsters takes place in a densely crowded metropolitan setting, complete with the shouting crowds and highly destructible landscapes are an important element of the action. You'll crash through lofty buildings, impale your opponents with sharp objects like radio antennas, and pick up and hurl police cars, tanks, and helicopters. There are many single-player modes in which you'll face off against one nefarious foe after another, up to 3 at a time. There are also two-player alternatives, ranging from a normal versus mode to a few throwaway minigames that you must first unlock. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Let's talk about the story before we go to its gameplay. War of the Monsters. The story takes place in the 1950s, when an alien fleet of flying saucer warships invades the Earth, wreaking havoc. The world's scientists succeed in developing a set of nuclear weapons that, when activated, send shockwaves into the saucers, short-circuiting them and causing them to crash. Unfortunately, the flying saucers were all powered by a radioactive green liquid that seeped out when they fell. The fuel infects animals, people, and machines in this way, turning them into huge mutant creatures and igniting a battle for domination. The player takes on the role of one of these creatures and fights against the others in imaginary cities throughout the world, as well as the surviving UFOs. The game's story mode begins in Midtown Park, where a massive mutant ape known as Kongar beats a wave of military soldiers before being attacked and defeated by the lead monster. Because the game is based on films like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, King Kong, and of course Godzilla, the characters look to be Ray Harryhausen offshoots right away. Each of the game's 10 giant animals is as much fun to play as they are to look at, since they resemble the cinematic tales we're accustomed to, yet have enough variants to rescue them from Takara copyright restrictions. And while they may seem to be the same creature in terms of handling and aptitude at first, the fact is they are more distinct than you think. After that, the main monster battles Tagara, a reptilian beast, in Gambler's Gulch. Following Tagara's loss, a military-class mech known as Robo-47 and the military arrive and a battle ensues with the lead monster, but they too are defeated. The main monster is attacked by an army of radioactive giant ants and a colossal robot, Goliath Prime, at a military installation in Rosedale Canyon. Prime, the robot as well as the ants, would all be defeated. The military in Metro City decides to put its new weapon, the Mecha Kongar, to the test against the huge mantis Praetor, who is assaulting the city. The main monster comes and defeats them both before they can fight. After that, the lead monster heads to Sentry Airfield and defeats the Raptros twin dragons. The lead monster then fights a swarm of Kineticlops, live electrical monsters, in the Atomic Island power station by causing a nuclear meltdown. The lead monster must fight a gigantic 3-headed plant entity known as Vagon in the resultant ruins. 2 Robo-47s stop a UFO attack in beautiful Baytown before attempting to kill the main monster. Both are defeated and repulsed. The rock monsters Magmo and Agamo fight against each other on the Pacific island of Club Caldera, with the lead monster are stuck in the middle, but both are defeated in the end. The lead monster gets grabbed by a UFO and is taken back to the mothership after fighting 2 robots at Sunopolis. There, the main monster must fight 3 Zorgulons before being captured once again as the mothership explodes, sending the UFO crashing into the capital, North America. In a multi-layered tripod combat armor, the alien commander, Cerebulon, strikes. Following Cerebulon's defeat, the lead monster Victor stands by and observes as Cerebulon's final portion, a little terrified insect-like creature, departs. Depending on who the player picks, a short film describing the monster's genesis is presented. Only Raptros, the dragon, and Zorgulon, the extraterrestrial entity, have their own endings, both of which conclude on a triumphant roar. Yes, we know, the story can be a bit complicated, but come on, who plays such games for the story anyway? What really is important is its mechanics and gameplay, so let's head into that quickly. Monster bashing and button mashing. This game functions similarly to a fighting game, although it differs from standard one-on-one organized rounds. Instead, in a 4-way simultaneous combat framework, bouts can include up to 4 participants. The camera is set in the third-person view, allowing the player to concentrate entirely on their character. In each game, monsters have 2 status bars, health and stamina. Every time a monster receives damage, its total health meter declines until it is entirely drained, culminating in player loss, according to the conventional fighting games method. The amount of energy a monster can attack is determined by its stamina. If a monster picks up another adversary or uses a ranged attack, the bar will decrease. A monster can execute special attacks if the bar is full, but they are momentarily unable to utilize basic attacks if the bar is empty. However, they may still toss and attack with objects, which adds energy to the bar and helps an energy bar recover quicker. In addition, unlike other fighting games, players are free to traverse the city, which allows them to climb and jump from buildings and cliffs. Monsters can utilize different materials found throughout the city as weapons, such as automobiles and rubble as missiles, steel girders, stone columns as clubs, and radio antennas as a spear to impale others and momentarily paralyze them. There are also certain environmental pickups, such as green or blue orbs and floating radioactive signals, that can improve health or stamina. If a monster assaults or is hurled into a building, it can be destroyed. Taller structures in some towns can tumble over sideways, crushing other monsters and killing them instantaneously. Boss battles are included in the adventure mode, along with a series of set confrontations with other creatures. They were substantially larger than the typical playable monsters, and defeating them necessitated certain methods. Adventure mode may also yield tokens, which can be spent in the Unlock shop to unlock additional towns, monsters, and monster skins. Mini-games such as Dodgeball and City Demolition may also be unlocked. There's also a multiplayer mode that lets 2 players battle in split-screen mode, which can be adjusted to merge into one screen when both players are near enough to fit on the same screen. It's simple to pick up and play this game. Each monster is controlled in the same way, and while some are notably faster or slower than others, a few have a limited capacity to fly. They're not that dissimilar. You may utilize swift and heavy strikes as any of the monsters, as well as reach out and grab anything that's around, whether it's a fire truck, rubble, or another creature, and use it as a projectile. Most conventional strikes can be blocked and repelled, while grapples are unblockable, and a few unblockable assaults have been inserted to keep players from becoming too defensive. Every monster can leap, climb buildings or other vertical surfaces, fire a weak but effective projectile, and execute 2 sorts of super moves, one that harms any nearby opponents, and the other that is better for striking targets from a distance. The attributes of each monster's attacks vary slightly. However, the creatures differ far more in look than in how they actually play. Then you'll wish there were more monsters to pick from, or that they had more ways to stand out. Nonetheless, the speedier characters such as Kongar the gorilla and Praetor the insect appear to have a significant advantage over their opponents, as their combinations connect more frequently and they do a better job of fleeing to recover a bad position. Of course, there are a few flaws in the gameplay, such as just a few preset combinations for each character, stages that are much smaller than they appear, and some really unpleasant circumstances that compel you to button mash excessively. While there's nothing wrong with needing to mash buttons now and then, removing a sharp instrument from your character's flesh or freeing yourself from an enemy's hold is a lesson in button mashing. In certain stages, you can easily throw pointy things at your enemies, rendering them immobile for far too long as they try to escape, only to be hit by the most painful combinations your creature can summon. These impaling assaults are overpowering, since you will take a lot of damage and be knocked out of the game for a period. Actually, you'll be out of commission very frequently, whether you've been stabbed, are soaring through the air after being slapped around, or are battling to get back on your feet after being swept off your feet. It's simple to take down creatures in War of the Monsters, and although this helps to give the impression that each creature is incredibly powerful, it also gives the impression that these monsters can't take much. In any case, it's not much fun to spend a significant portion of each match trying to regain your footing. Should you give it a try? We think War of the Monsters definitely deserves a remastered version launched with modern graphics today. The game's main mechanics function admirably, the action is strong, and you'll get the impression that these creatures are slamming into one another with all their strength. It may be quite exciting to knock your opponents into a skyscraper, which generally cause the structure to collapse, as well as to use ambient items such as lethal projectile weapons. This type of stuff can be found in almost all of the game's numerous forms of play, including the adventure mode's various situations. There's no narrative here, but the adventure mode consists of a series of increasingly difficult tasks in which you'll face off against all of the game's other creatures, typically more than one. The adventure mode includes a few neat surprises, but it all plays out the same no matter whatever monster you choose. The free-for-all and endurance modes allow you to practice your abilities against the computer, but the two-player modes in War of the Monsters are likely to be more enjoyable. This is primarily due to the fact that fighting games are intrinsically more enjoyable when played with two players. In either case, you and a companion can choose to either beat each other up or try to work together to crush computer opponents to bits. When your creature is far away from the other players, the game splits the screen vertically, and the split screen tries to disappear as soon as the two of you are near enough. However, the game's quick speed can sometimes go ahead of the split screen switching, leading you to feel confused when your monster disappears from view. If you have two or more gigantic monster enthusiasts in the room, two-player War of the Monsters can still be a blast. War of the Monsters is charming and engaging, and it definitely addresses a topic that should be addressed more frequently in video games. Even though the gameplay has its moments, this one would be better suited for a weekend rental rather than a permanent addition to your collection if not the developers decide to release a remastered version. That's it for this one, guys. Let us know which game you want us to cover next in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.